Hello. Today we're going to talk about the footer. We've already gone ahead, we've worked on the menu here, we've worked on a couple of page layout options for you. You have it so that you can have the content on the left with the sidebar on the right, or vice versa, or have a page that's just all content with no sidebar. So now we're moving down here to the bottom of the page. Footer is, in this case, it's down here, it's very boring and nothing's going on. Well, the first thing we're going to talk about with the footer is how you could put some functional areas in the footer, which are referred to as widgets. Widgets are little areas that bring in information either from your website, or they can bring in little applications like little calendars or little links to Facebook and Twitter and social media icons. So for example, over here in the sidebar on the right hand side, we have a widgetized area, which is bringing in widgets. In this case, it's bringing in information about the recent posts on your blog, recent comments, archives, and so on and so forth. There's a search box, which is a widget, which is sitting over here in the sidebar. Now, widgets can live in the sidebar, but they can also live in other areas on your website if you set it up so they can do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a widgetized area in the footer so that you can bring in little widgets to display information there. So let's do that by starting out to understand how the widget areas are brought into the sidebar. The widget areas are brought into the sidebar via a function. And the functions in WordPress are controlled on the functions.php page. So I've downloaded the functions.php page in a Dreamweaver here, and I've scrolled down the page. You can see this is functions.php. And you can see over here in my underscores folder that just lives out in the main folder there. And I've come down to the function where the sidebar gets called, right? And so this is a function, which means it's like a little program that runs, and it's called underscores widgets. Now, I named my theme underscores. You remember when you downloaded underscores, you can name it anything you want. So if you look at yours, it might say something different here, whatever you named your theme. But the function is called register sidebar, and what that does is it creates a sidebar for the website. So it gives it a name, the sidebar, as part of the underscores theme. It gives it an ID of sidebar 1. It wraps the whole widget in something called an aside, which is a format for displaying it. It gives it a title with an H1 tag and so on and so forth. So this whole action here creates the sidebar where your widgets can live. Now, after that, what happens is the sidebar is called into the web page, and then it displays the widgets. So that's done via a page inside your website called sidebar.php, this page right here. And what happens is there's some PHP code on here that says, if there is an active sidebar, go ahead and bring it in. It's called sidebar 1. That's what we defined it as over here. And then bring that in, and you can bring in the widget areas that we want to appear in that sidebar. Okay, and then how does this sidebar actually get called in to appear on the page itself? That's done by the page template. So for example, here is the main template for your website, page.php. And here's that information. And down at the bottom, you see this function here, get sidebar. That's what brings in the sidebar page, which displays the widgets on the right-hand side. Okay? So if we wanted to change this, for example, if we wanted to create a new quote sidebar, which would bring in a widgeted area in the footer, we could come in here into these parentheses, and we could type in the word footer, and what would happen is now it would be looking for a page called sidebar-footer PHP to bring in, which would replace this and would bring in the widget areas for the footer. Now, in order to do that, we're going to have to create a new function here, which will, allow us to bring in. It will allow that footer widget area to be created, and then we'll be able to bring it in on our pages. Okay, so in order to make this new widgeted area, first we're going to have to copy this code on our functions.php page, which is registering the sidebar. We're going to go ahead and copy this area right here, and then I'm going to make some space underneath it. I'm going to paste it in. So now we have a new area where we can register a new sidebar, and that's where we're going to put the information for the footer sidebar. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to give this sidebar a new name. So we're going to go ahead and highlight this word sidebar and rename it footer widgets. Then we're going to give it a new ID so it can be distinguished from this sidebar. So we're going to call it sidebar-2. You can call it anything you want as long as it's different from that. Now I'm also going to add a description down here in this description line, which doesn't have any information in it. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and highlight and copy this line of code here from the name area, just this line after the equals and greater than, and I'm going to replace this little quote area here, and I'm going to put in some information here. We're going to say footer widgets are widgets that appear in the page footer. Okay, so that's just my little description for what these footer widgets are. Now all this other information below this description line I'm going to leave the same so that this area, this new footer widget area, is styled the same way as my sidebar, so that when I create styles they'll affect both. Now if we were to go look at what exists already before I've uploaded this code, if we were to go look at what exists on the website, if we logged into the dashboard, go down to the appearance section and click on widgets, we would see that there is a sidebar area here which allows the widgets, which are these areas over here, to be dragged into the sidebar, and then they will display in the sidebar area. Well, by copying and pasting that code and giving the sidebar footer, the footer sidebar, a new name and a new ID, we want another area to appear over here, which is footer widgets, and then that would allow us to drag in some widgets over here, which we would then make appear in the footer. So if we go back to Dreamweaver here, we save this page and the change we made by, in my case, hitting Command S or Control S in your case, and then we take this file and we upload it. And then we go back to our website here and hit the refresh button. You'll see that now a new area appears here in the widget section called footer widgets. And this is the area that will allow us to drag in widgets that will eventually appear in the footer. Now you can see there's a little arrowhead up here, and if we click on that, it opens up and it shows us the text description that we had typed in there in the function, and it gives us some white space, an area where we can drag these little custom widgets into our footer area. Now in order to be able to test this out to see if it's going to work, we're going to go ahead and drag some different things over here into the footer. So we'll go ahead and we'll drag in recent comments, and let's see, what else will we drag in? Maybe calendar. Okay, and we'll just hit save on those so that those will appear for us. Now I've created the footer widget, but I have not created a way for that information to be pulled into the page yet, so this will not yet show up in the footer area. So what we need to do in order for that to happen is we need to make a new sidebar page. For example, you can see that, to bring the sidebar in, we have this page called sidebar.php. So we have to create a brand new page called sidebar-footer, and then put the code on there which will allow that function to bring in the code to display the widgets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new page. And it's going to be a blank page. It's going to be a PHP page, and I'm going to create it. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this inside my underscores folder. So what I'm doing is just navigating to where my actual underscores folder is. Okay, so I'm going into the underscores folder, and I'm going to save this as sidebar dash footer dot php. Okay, and you can see that that's what it's called right up here. Okay, so now we have to replace the code on this new page we made with code which will bring in our widget area for the footer. Now that code that you're going to need is on the code snippets, which you should download from the website for today's post. And so I've already got that here. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy this block of code from the code snippets page. I'm going to go ahead and highlight all this code here and replace it with this. And so now this is the footer sidebar. It's going to bring in sidebar 2, which is what we told it to call this new sidebar. And it's going to give it an ID of footer widgets and a class of footer widgets widget area. So that is now going to be saved. I'm just going to do file save in my sidebar footer file. So what this code actually says is up here at the top it checks to see if there's a sidebar that has widgets in it. If so, it runs the rest of this code here. We've added a new div which is called supplementary, and that begins here and ends here. You can see that this comment code tells us where the div ends. And we have another div called footer widgets which begins here and ends right down here. And this footer widgets div brings in sidebar 2. So once again, we've saved this. Now we've done 2 of the 3 parts that we need to get this footer widget area to be active and to display. We created the new function over here, which is for sidebar 2, the footer widgets area. We made a new page, which is the sidebar footer page, which is going to bring in the dynamic sidebar. In other words, it's going to bring in any widgets that we display in this widgetized area over here in the back end of WordPress. But now we need a way, as the third and final step, to bring this sidebar 2 into our page template. Now actually, we don't want to bring the footer in using this function, this code here on the page.php page, because we're not actually bringing it in like a sidebar that's going to appear on the side. We actually want to bring it into the footer area itself. So what we'll do is we'll go in here where we made this change to the code before, and we'll take out this word footer in quotes. So what that will allow to happen is if we're using this template, which is the page.php template, it'll just bring in the regular sidebar like normal. So we'll go ahead and save that. Okay, we'll go back here to our sidebar.footer page that we made, and we'll be sure and upload this. So we'll do put. We'll upload that to the site so that's available to us. And now what we're going to do is we want this sidebar, this new footer widget area, to actually appear in the footer itself. So we're going to have to open up the footer.php file. So we'll double click on that. And by the way, if I ever have a file over here that you don't see in your list, you can just click on this button up here, which allows you to see the remote server and the local files. Go find the file that you're looking for, footer, and double click on it, and it will download it and open it up. When it downloads it, it'll ask you if you wanted to overwrite your existing files, and the answer is yes, because you want to download that and then be able to edit it. So then we can close this up by clicking on this button here. And here is our footer file. And now we're going to add some code in here which is going to bring in that footer sidebar. Now we can put this footer area, this widgetized footer area anywhere we want. I'm going to go ahead and put it right here. So on this first line of code that says footer, I'm going to click at the end of that and hit return or enter to make some space. And then I'm going to type in a PHP tag, and I'll use the get sidebar function, and then I'll put in footer. like that. So now this is similar to the code we had seen before on this page.php page. It's similar to this code down here, which we're using to get the sidebar. But now in the footer, we're getting another sidebar, which is referred to as footer. So that is the sidebar-footer file that we made. This is what's going to allow that to be brought into the footer area of the website. So now that we've made that change, we're going to go ahead and save this page. We're going to upload it. And now, okay, it's showing me that I had some footer changes, so I might want to check on that and make sure that I didn't make any changes that I want to keep. Well, I'm looking at this and I don't believe that there were any changes made. Let's see. Footers changed on the remote server since your last get or put operation. I don't really think anything terrible is going to happen, but let's go ahead and do it. Okay, so now it's uploading it. It's actually waiting for the server to get its act together. Okay, so now it's uploaded it. So now we can go back to the website and we can go to the front end of the website and we can scroll down and see if our footers that we dragged in there are going to appear. So if we scroll down to the bottom of the website, sure enough, we see this information here. This is the calendar, widget that I dragged in, and the recent comments. And of course, this is not formatted in any kind of attractive manner. It just is showing up, which is all that we really asked it to do at this point. Now, if I wanted to make any changes to the widgetized area, like for example, I didn't want that terrible calendar to show up, I can take these and drag them over to the inactive widgets area. Let's say I don't want my comments in my footer, I can drag that down here too. And then when I go look back and reload the home page, you can see that those widgets are gone. So what this means is that you can make a widgetized area and you can have it appear anywhere you want. WordPress underscores comes with a default widget area in the sidebar, but you now know that you can make a widgetized area and put it in the footer. You can even make a widgetized area and put it in the header. So this gives you a lot of options for what you can do with widgets. Now that we've created a custom widget area in the footer, we want to test that out to make sure that it can handle all of the widgets that come standard with WordPress. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here into our back end of our website. We're going to come in here into plugins and we're going to go to add new. And now we're going to search for a developer widget. A developer widget is one that's used by developers who are creating or customizing themes to help them test things out and make sure they work. So the plugin we're going to look for, we're going to come over here to the search plugins box and we're going to type in Monster Widget. And we're going to hit the return button and here it comes up, Monster Widget. You can see it's got 5 stars and 40,000 downloads. We're going to click install now. And it's going to install this widget for us. We're going to activate it by click activating plugin. Okay, and now we can see that it is installed. Now we're going to go under appearance and widgets. And we're going to get rid of all of these widgets that are in the sidebar in order to be able to test out both the sidebar and the footer area. Now what's going to happen when we test these out is every one of the sidebars that comes standard with WordPress is going to appear in the sidebar and the footer. And then if they all look correct, then that means that our widgets are functioning normally. So the way you do this is you take the Monster widget and you just drag it over here into the sidebar. and you also take it and drag it over here into the footer. Now under here, you can say that you want to make sure that it shows up in the sidebar and it shows up in the footer. Now if I click on this and say add widget, it's going to add it over here. We added it manually, but you can do it that way too. So now we've got the monster widget showing up in the sidebar and the footer, which means every single widget is going to show up in both areas. So we'll go back to the front page of the website, and you're going to see a ton of widgets show up over here. So this is everything that we have out of the box, all the widgets that can show up. Notice they're all in the sidebar, but then we get down here to the footer, and these are all of the widgets that can show up in the footer. Okay? So, ton of them. But now that everything looks okay, we know that it will all work in both the footer and the sidebar widget. Now, right now, if we look at this sidebar, which goes all the way down, and then the footer starts right here, the footer isn't really differentiated from the sidebar or from the page content very much. So let's add some custom code to the style sheet to make the footer area look different. So if we go back into Dreamweaver, we can see in our footer.php file that the class, in other words the style, which is affecting the footer, is called site-footer. So if we go to our style sheet, style.css, and we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we can add in some information with the site-footer class, and then that will be information that will style the footer for us. So what we're going to do is let's scroll up to the top of the footer area here, or I'm sorry, I apologize, the style.css page. Let's go ahead and scroll up to the top there. We can make a new section. We'll copy this 12 section here, and we'll make a new section, which we'll paste in the 12, but we'll call this 13, and we'll call this footer. And then let's just copy this text here, which is the comment code for a normal header here. Go all the way down to the bottom of the page, and we'll insert what we just pasted in, or what we just copied. We'll now call this area 13 footer. So that's our comment, which is going to allow us to find this section. And then we'll put in the class site footer like this. Now what we're actually going to do is have you copy and paste the code from the code snippets right in here. So you actually won't need to type that in. That will be on the code snippet. Okay, so in order to get the code that we're going to put in here to style the footer, we're going to bring up our code snippets page here, and we're going to go ahead and highlight this code at the bottom that says .site-footer. We're going to copy it. We're going to go ahead and paste that in here. What's happening is we're putting some padding around the footer. We're setting the font size in two different ways. We're setting it in pixels and in something called REMs, which is for modern day browsers. We're doing the same with the color in the background. We're setting the sort of standard way of doing it for older browsers and a hue, saturation, lightness settings here for newer browsers. Same with the background, the hexadecimal color, and then the hue, saturation, lightness. Okay, so once you've pasted this in, go ahead and upload it to the site. And then we'll go out to the site. You can see once again that the styling of the sidebar and the footer are basically identical, so there's nothing to differentiate them. But if we refresh this now that we've uploaded the style, you can see that a dark background appears behind the footer, and that the font is much larger, different colors, things like that. And so this helps you differentiate the two and create the footer to be the way you want it to look. Okay, that's what we're going to be working on tonight, creating the widgetized area and doing a little bit of styling for that. We'll pick that up next time with some more styling. Go ahead and do this so far. Get as far as I've gotten, and that'll get you set up so that you've got a footer to start with. All right, thank you very much.